What is going on, everybody? Christian from the Lay and Pray MMA podcast. This week, I will be doing a solo episode. Jeffrey and Trenton are both super busy this week, but I wanted to get an episode out before we got to the pay-per-view this week, which is now tomorrow, UFC 267, tomorrow morning. So for those of you in the United States, make sure you wake up early so that way you can watch the fights. I think the preliminaries start at like 6:30 in the morning, Alaska time. And then the main card I think starts at 10:30 Alaska time. So if you're on the East Coast, 4 hours ahead from the times that I just listed. If you're listening to us now on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, or Spotify or Stitcher, thank you. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. If you're listening to us on any podcast platform, make sure to go check out our YouTube channel. Also, make sure to go check out our Facebook page. It's also Lay and Pray MMA podcast. That's where you can find us. Just real quick here, we've got a couple notes in reference to the most recent PFL results from the tournaments. Clarissa Shields ended up losing her fight by split decision. I was unable to watch that fight card. I've been dealing with COVID, so haven't been able to stay up to date on certain things. But it was, my understanding was that she just got dominated on the ground. So that's something that she needs to continue to work on. That was something that we had discussed in the past with her. She ended up winning her fight by ground and pound, her last fight, but still something that she needs to continue to work on, continue to evolve, just because that's such a huge part of the game now. In the early stages of mixed martial arts, maybe stand-up was a little bit more of a dominated area, but now with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, even judo, just different types of martial arts now, you're going to have to develop some sort of a ground game. Kayla Harrison ended up winning the lightweight tournament for women's lightweight tournament, won the $1 million, and then it goes into what's next. My understanding is that Dana White essentially, I really don't think that Dana White has any interest, because what it will turn into is just another cyborg situation. But I think Kayla Harrison is a little bit more outspoken compared to Cyborg. I think Cyborg was a little bit better to work with, even though there was not as much of a good relationship with Dana based on comments that Dana had made in the past before Cyborg came to the UFC. So I think that's something that the UFC is going to need to take into account if they even think about signing Kayla Harrison. I just don't know what she like, because they're not going to open up a women's 155-pound division. They're already having a hard enough time as is with the women's 145-pound division, with giving it some depth. 135 and below, there's so much talent, but getting girls that are big enough, and 145, I mean, there aren't very many that can be at 145. Like, off the top of my head, I think of Megan Anderson and Amanda Nunes, but Amanda Nunes also is the 135-pound champ and 145-pound champ. So that's something that they really need to take into account if they even really consider signing Kayla. I really don't think they are, because I mean, Dana White really doesn't have any interest. So what I would love, though, is for Kayla to go to Bellator, see if she can. She's fought at 145 before. She when she was in Invicta, when in the beginning of COVID, I'm pretty sure that PFL, which was formerly known as World Series of Fighting, they, I think, closed down temporarily. So she ended up going to Invicta and fighting at 145. So she can make the weight. It's just one of those things. But good for Kayla Harrison. She The second time she's won the tournament, so she's a millionaire. Good for her. It'll just be interesting to see what she does next, because I know that she wants to challenge herself. So it'd be good for her to really, I think she has a better chance and she has more opportunities going to Bellator and fighting Cyborg. And she'll make more money. UFC, obviously, you know, that's the big dance. So if that's where you're going to prove yourself, go to the UFC. But if you're trying to still have some stiff competition and generate some income, go to Bellator. You'll have sponsors. It's not, you know, strictly tied to Venom or before Reebok. So yeah. Next, excuse me, let me drink my coffee real quick. Okay, next. Joanna Jedrzejczyk said that there's only 3 fights that she really wants, and those are Rose Namajunas, Weili Zhang, or Carla Esparza. Those of you that have paid attention to UFC for extended periods of time, you know that Carla Esparza won the Ultimate Fighter, which she ended up winning the strawweight title on the Ultimate Fighter. And then her first defense was against Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And Joanna ended up beating the brakes off of her. And now Carla Esparza, she's worked her way back up to hopefully get another title shot. So that will be interesting to see, just if they were to do like a number 1 contenders fight. Obviously, Joanna hasn't fought in like 19 months. Her last fight, I think, was against Weili Zhang, which was an absolute slugfest. It was so much fun to watch. It got my vote for fight of the year. That's what, if I could have a vote in that, I would have voted that as fight of the year. But yeah, she said essentially there's nobody else on her radar that she really wants to fight. And I don't think that Joanna is like hurting for a fight. I don't think she's hurting for money, which is oftentimes you'll see with a lot of the male fighters, is that they don't want to come back, but they have to, because really that's all they know. So that's what they do. They come back, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously it'll be interesting to see the outcome of next week's fight card, which is obviously Rose versus Weili 2. So I'm interested to see what Joanna does and who she wants to fight. Obviously, she doesn't really have as much pull as Rose or Weili do, because they're active right now. Even Carla, because Carla's put together a nice win streak and she's worked her way back. So it'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would love to see Weili versus Joanna 2. And then honestly, the last fight that Rose and Joanna had, I thoroughly enjoyed that fight too. That was a really good fight. So they could go for a trilogy on that one. I would not mind that at all either. Either way, Joanna's fought these girls already, so we know what we're getting, and I think it would be great fights for all three of those women. Against Joanna would be a good fight. Recently, like within the last couple of days, somebody commented on Twitter, basically like update your last photo saved in your camera roll. And Conor McGregor posted a photo of him versus Max Holloway when they fought years ago. When Conor was still on the come up, on the rise at 145. So that would be interesting. Max Holloway responded and basically was like, shoot, let's do it in March. So we haven't seen Max fight since January, when he absolutely put it on Calvin Kattar and landed the most significant strikes of all time. And I think threw the most significant strikes of all time too. Threw the most significant strikes of all time as well. So sorry, I got a dog that's squeaking on a squeak toy. So yeah, so I think for this fight, obviously Max is fighting Yair Rodriguez next month, I think November 11th. So depending on how that fight goes, hopefully they can get I'm kind of torn in this one because I want Max to fight Alexander Volkanovski. Like, I absolutely want that fight to happen again because I feel like Max won the last fight. So I want him to get his belt back. I want him to fight at 145 to get his belt back. But I love Max so much that I want him to get a big payday. And it would be interesting to see him fight Conor at 155 all these years later. Because we've seen Conor at 155. His only win at 155 is against Eddie Alvarez for the title when he first went up. But he hasn't won at 155 since. He won at 170. He beat Nate at 170, and then he beat beat Cowboy at 170 as well. So we know what he looks like at 170, and I mean he's 2-1 at 170, but 155 Conor still hasn't put it together and hasn't figured it out. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Squeaky toys, I'm telling you. Another thing that came out was Nate Diaz, his next and possibly last UFC fight. So I just, there was talks of him versus Tony Ferguson, which for fans, that's a fun fight. That's a good fight. But I honestly don't want either. Like, if that's going to be your last fight, why? I mean, if it's going to be your last fight, I understand because it's somebody that you know is going to stand and they're going to push the pace. Excuse me. Just like you're going to push the pace. They both will. They're both fun. And as I said, they are fan favorites. But I don't know if Tony, on the decline that he's on, if it would generate enough buzz and make people want to like buy pay-per-views, because I would assume that they would do it on a pay-per-view. And then, you know, say Tony loses, that should be Tony's. I mean, Tony's on a skid, so that should be his last fight too. He should be gone. And I think it's so much. I don't think it's so much Nate wants to. Like, the UFC is not like, okay, this is going to be your last fight, Nate. I just think his contract's coming up, and I think he wants to do other things where he can generate more income. Obviously, he has his own business, like his own weed business. Like, I don't know if it's a dispensary, but I know that they grow. And then on top of that, there's been rumors that he wants to fight one of the Paul's brothers. I can't remember if it's Jake or Logan, but I mean, he would make so much more money doing that too. So I would love for him to see what's out there, because no matter what, I think he could always come back. I think Dana and the matchmakers and everybody involved in the business with the UFC, WME, I think they would all love to have him back because they know that he's going to generate buzz. And the thing is that I think Nate's a good enough boxer that it would be interesting to see him fight in a boxing fight just to see how he would do, because I think he would bring it, because we already know that he's not going to get knocked out, so I'm not worried about that. It was, I guess it's just figuring out what's going to be best for Nate, and then if he re-signs with the UFC, great, that's awesome. If he doesn't, I hope he finds something that he can do, that he's dominant in, and he can make a lot of money doing it. Because over the years, I couldn't stand the Diaz brothers, but really, they've grown on me. Specifically, Nate's grown on me just because he brings it every single time. And my biggest thing is I didn't like him because I like guys like Takanori Gomi and guys like Cowboy Cerrone early days. And he beat him. Gray Maynard was another one that he just absolutely put it on him. And I just was a bitter fan that the guy that I was going for lost. And I guess now that I look back on it, the dude brings it. So I can't be mad at him because he showed up and the other guy didn't. So all right. This is something that is odd because it doesn't really seem like I guess the fact that it's been 25 years. Bruce Buffer is going to miss his first pay-per-view in 25 years since he actually got COVID. So he was unable to travel, unable to go to Yaz Island or Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. So there's going to be somebody else doing the announcing. It's crazy. I mean, you look back on all these fights, the amount of fights that Bruce Buffer has announced for. I mean, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of fights. And the dude was on a hell of a run, and it sucks. And I sympathize for him because obviously I got COVID as well, as I told you guys at the beginning of the show. So I sympathize for him, and I hope he's doing good. Sucks that his streak had to end that way, but I don't know if anybody's going to ever pass that. That's insane. 25 years of pay-per-view straight. The dude was doing it when when UFC first started, and it was practically irrelevant, so the fact that he hung tough, stuck true, and the dude's one of the best dressed dudes in the game. So hopefully he recovers well. Hopefully COVID doesn't kick his ass like I know a lot of people it has. So best of luck, Bruce Buffer. Hope you stay safe there, dude. All right, time to get into previews and predictions. Let's see here. All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Preliminary card. Okay, I do want to do the just one fight on the preliminary card. It's Amanda Ribas versus Verna Jandiroba, also known as Rob Schneider. Amanda Ribas is coming off of a loss to Marina Rodriguez, which that's okay. Marina Rodriguez is a stud. And Verna Jandiroba is coming off of a win against Kanaka Murata. But before that fight, she lost to Mackenzie Dern. So this will be a fun fight just because I think Verna is the more dangerous person. Like, she's more dangerous all around. She's got a great submission game. She's shown that she can strike. So that if in this fight, Amanda, obviously she had a lot of hype around her because she stayed on Fight Island with the off chance that she might fight again. She kind of did like a Kenza Shimaya thing. So I'm going to go with Verna Jandiroba in this fight just because I've seen more out of her that I think she's just more of a dominant fighter. I think she seeks that finish, and she's proven that she can finish whether it goes to the ground or striking. I do like Amanda Ribas though. And she's young enough that she has time to grow, and she's still not in her prime yet. So she still has time to get there. All right. Starting off in the main card, we have Magametta and Kilayev versus Volkan Oezdemir. Obviously, Volkan has he's gone up against a lot of stiff competition just because he's fought the best since, like, as he was on his way up to fight DC for the title. Obviously he lost, but he still got to that point, and the dude was starching everybody. He was just putting it on, absolutely putting it on everybody. We go back to 2017. He had a good fight with Oven St. Preux. He knocked out Misha Serkinov, knocked out Jimmy Manoa. Then he fought Daniel Cormier. Obviously, got ground and pounded. I think he got put in a crucifix. Then he lost to Anthony Smith. Then he lost to Dominic Reyes. So he was on a 3-fight skid there at one point, but he turned it around. TKO to Lir Latifi. Then he beat Alexander Rakic. But then last year, he had one fight, and that was that devastating knockout to Yuri Prohashka, where it was a one-hitter quitter. And that was his last fight. But you look at the guys that he's fought, it's the guys that are in the top 5 or top 6, besides Lir Latifi, but just absolute studs. Meanwhile, Magametta and Kilayev, he's coming off of decision win against Nikita Krylov, but before that, he had the 2 fights with Ion Cutelaba. The first one was kind of like, it was kind of like controversial, but I mean, he starched him in the second fight, so it was like, you know what, it didn't even matter. Look at that whole thing. His only loss so far was in his first fight in the UFC back in 2018, and he got submitted by Paul Craig, but he was absolutely dominating that fight. And then it was just the last second submission. So I really like Magomed in this fight. It's hard to go against Dagestani fighters, or all those guys are Russian fighters. So I'm going to go with Magomed in this fight just because I feel like he's on the come up. I feel like he's proven that he belongs in the top 10. And obviously Volkan does too, because you look at his track record, you look at who he's fought, and you're like, okay, yeah, this dude, he's legit still. He still has it. So, oh man, yeah, I'm going to go with Magomed in this fight. I think it's going to be I really think that Magomed's going to catch him with something. So I'm going to go with either a TKO or a KO. I'm not going to say specifically what round, but I think it's going to be a knockout or a TKO, just because Volkan's shown that his chin he's susceptible to getting knocked out. And Magomed brings it, and he pushes the pace. Next in the welterweight division, we've got Li Jingling versus Kenza Shimaya. Obviously, we haven't seen Kenza in a long time because he's been dealing with COVID pretty much since the beginning. At one point, he retired, and then he is like, nah, I'm not going to be retired. So Lee, on the other hand, I think he's got 3 knockouts in a row. One of those against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Oh, no, he doesn't have 3 knockouts in a row. His last 3 wins are by knockout or TKO, though. Because his last fight, before his knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio, he got beat by Neil Magny. Obviously Lee is exciting. He's got that knockout power, but I don't think Kenza is susceptible. I don't think his chin is weak. We really haven't seen him get tested. But from what I've seen from Kenza, he's got the perfect timing on takedowns. You look at the 2 or 3 fights that he had on Fight Island, he is so good at timing the takedown. And the fact that he can fight at 170 or 185 and still do what he has shown us is really impressive. There's stories of him absolutely ragdolling Alexander Gustafsson, who's a light heavyweight. And the way that I look at that is obviously training is one thing. So I get people don't make a big deal about training, but Gustafsson is a big dude, and he's no slouch in terms of his wrestling and takedown defense. He's pretty good. And the fact that Khamzat can ragdoll him and get takedowns on him that's very impressive. The one thing that I'm worried about though with Shimaev is the fact that he we don't know. We haven't seen him fight since COVID, like since he got COVID. I think he got COVID twice. And it can affect your lungs, like significantly affect your lungs. So that's one thing that I'm worried about in this fight. I'm still going to pick Shimaev, but I don't think it's going to be an easy win because Lee doesn't strike me as a guy who's just going to, he's not just going to give up. He's going to try and finish you all the way up until the very end. I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against Khamzat. The thing that's going to affect Khamzat the most is conditioning. I think just seeing where his lungs are at from COVID. So I'm going to go Khamzat in this fight. Should be interesting. So hopefully we get a good fight out of that because Khamzat is exciting. He's very exciting to watch. Next up in the heavyweight division, we've got Alexander Volkov versus Marcin Tybura. Obviously, in the most recent fights, we've seen Alexander fight against his last fight. He lost to Cyril Gane. Before that, he TKO'd Alistair Overeem in Alistair's last fight before getting released by the UFC. We watched Alexander beat Walt Harris. And then before that, he lost to Curtis Blades. So this should be an interesting fight. Also Marcin Tybura, sorry. Let's take a look at his record. His last fight, he TKO'd Walt Harris. And then before that, he beat Greg Hardy by TKO, beat Ben Rothwell, and then beat Maxim Grishin. His last loss was against Augusto Sakai in 2019. So the dude's legit. And at one point, he was on a 2-fight skid. Might have been a little bit more than that. No, it was a 2-fight skid. I think the biggest difference in this fight is going to be the range, the amount of reach difference that there is in the fight. Because you look at Volkov, I think he's 6'6", 80-inch reach. Oh, he really doesn't have that much of a significant advantage in the reach, considering he's 4 inches taller. The weight difference isn't much, but I do feel like the height is going to be a deciding factor in this fight. I don't know if Marcin Tybura's takedowns are going to be as effective on Volkov. I think that if he's doing the right things, he's working on his takedown defense. He's working on making sure that he doesn't get taken down. The hard thing for him was in his last fight. He was in a striking. It was essentially a points fight against Cyril Gane. So, and Cyril just was the better striker. I think Cyril's the best striker in the heavyweight division. He might not be the most powerful, but in terms of crisp striking and fundamentals, I still think that Cyril's the best striker. I'm going to go with Volkov in this fight just because you look at who he's fought. He's fought some of the best guys in the division, some of the top guys in the division. Obviously, he fought Derek Lewis, was beating him all the way up until the last 20, 25 seconds of their fight when he got knocked out. And Marcin Tybura still has, his biggest win is probably Greg Hardy or Walt Harris, maybe even. Those are in terms of name. No, I guess Ben Rothwell. Yeah, Ben Rothwell is a big win too. But I got to go with Alexander Volkov in this fight. He's an absolute stud. And I think he's going to put the game plan together that's going to win the fight. I think it's going to be a lot of outside striking. And it looks like when he throws, So like when you watch the fight with him and Alistair Overeem, it looked like he was throwing so slow, but there was so much power behind his shot, and it just put Alistair away. So I think the biggest thing in this fight is going to be probably outside leg kicks and just striking from a distance. So I don't think there's going to be a knockout or a TKO. I think it's going to go to a decision, and I'm going to pick Volkov in this one. Next up in the lightweight division, Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. This is the people's fight. This is going to be an absolute, I would say a slugfest, but I don't know if it's going to be a slugfest. I feel like Dan Hooker, he has earned a lot of fans since his last fight against Nasrat Haqparast. I mean, they both were dealing with visa issues. Then they both come in, they both make weight on getting there the day before their fight, and they both made weight after traveling for a day. And then Dan just put on a very good performance. And then he stepped up and was like, yeah, I'll fight Islam, even though it's only one ranking above him. And before that, he said, there's no incentive for me to do that. Obviously, the UFC came back with a good offer. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I might as well. I'm going to sneeze. I can feel it. Give me a second. Okay. I jinxed myself. And you look at the guys that Dan has fought. I mean, Dustin Poirier, the best 155er. God damn it. I can feel a sneeze coming on and it's pissing me off. Okay. Dustin Poirier, who I view as the best 155 pounder. If not just in UFC, but in the world right now, I think he's the best 155er. And I think that, besides Dan Hooker fighting Dustin Poirier, he's fought Paul Felder. He's fought, he beat Gilbert Burns when Gilbert Burns was fighting at 155. The fact that Dan Hooker at one point was a featherweight blows my mind because he's a pretty big dude. He looks big for 155. Meanwhile, Islam, I think his biggest win was, he got a submission win over Drew Dober, which, that's pretty impressive. Drew Dober is no slouch. And then he beat Thiago Moises. So I think for me, I'm torn. I'm torn in this fight because obviously Dan Hooker's had a shorter prep time because he just recently fought on the last pay-per-view card. And Islam hasn't, he's gotten a full camp, but obviously he was prepping for Rafael dos Anjos, and then that fell out. But Dan Hooker, he was in a fight camp. So it's like he never really got out of fight camp other than maybe the 1 week that he took off to recover while they were figuring out if he would while they were working out a deal to get him to accept this fight. I think this is the fight where I'm going to choose with my heart and not my head. I'm going to go with Dan Hooker in this one. If Islam wins, it's because he did the typical takedown, the stereotypical Dagestani takedown, ground and pound, wrestle you into oblivion. That's what I think is going to happen. Meanwhile, Dan is dangerous. He has shown that he has some submissions, but it's his striking that I feel like is going to be a deciding factor. But he just needs to make sure that his takedown defense is on point, because if Islam gets a hold of his legs and can just get a good enough squeeze, he's going to get taken down. And then at that point, you're just neutralized. You're completely neutralized. So you need to make sure that you maintain range. And he needs to make sure that he's just prepped to be ground and pounded, and hopefully his cardio is still on point. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna go with Dan Hooker in this fight over Islam, strictly because this is my heart over my head pick for this fight card. For the interim bantamweight title, we got Pierre versus Corey Sandhagen. Obviously, Pierre won the interim title beat Jose Aldo in his first title defense. He lost because he did an illegal strike on Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain way over dramatized the knee strike, and now that this was supposed to be Aljamain versus Peter Yan 2, and Aljamain had to basically was advised not to do it because he needed to have surgery. This is gonna be an interesting fight because Peter Yan, I feel like, is the better all around. He's the better striker because has more of a boxing background and / kickboxing. I think he trains in Thailand, kickboxing in Thailand. Meanwhile, Corey Sandhagen, he lost Aljamain Sterling, which was by a rear naked choke in the first round early in the fight. But Corey Sandhagen bounced back, and he really has had, he lost to TJ Dillashaw, but he was looking that could have gone either way. I personally thought TJ won, but there's a lot more people that thought that Corey Sandhagen won. So I could see it. I wouldn't be mad at it either way. Before that, obviously, he had the flying knee knockout of Frankie Edgar. Before that, he did the spinning head kick or the wheel kick to Marlon Moraes and ended up TKOing him in that fight. So I really like Corey in this fight. Even though it's shorter notice, he still got 6 weeks of preparation, I think, that's a pretty good time. I really feel like Corey, when he loses, he's the type of guy that gets better with each loss. I feel like he had TJ in some very dangerous positions, which one of those was the knee bar attempt that he threw up. It was either knee bar or heel hook. And that's why TJ's knee is all messed up, because he ended up tearing his PCL, I think, or LCL. I can't remember off the top of my head. And I really think the biggest thing that cost Corey in that fight is he kept trying to throw so many spinning kicks, and then he would let TJ have his back and get pushed up against the fence, and then was taking strikes that he didn't need to take because he put himself in a bad position. I think Peter Yan and that was TJ Dillashaw coming off the couch after 2 years because, he did EPO. So he was coming off of a suspension. Peter Yan has been more active, and I feel like if he puts Corey in those positions, it could be really bad for Corey. But I don't think that Corey will allow himself to, I think he's learned from the TJ fight, and I think he's now going to be pushing for finishes as much as possible so he doesn't end up in another position like the one that he was in, where he ends up not getting, the nod in that fight against TJ. So I'm going to go with Corey in this fight. I'm going to pick Corey to win this fight. I think it's going to be very close, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Yan after this. I think we're going to obviously see Corey Sandhagen versus Aljamain 2. I would love to see Yan versus Dillashaw, and then Yan versus Dillashaw for the number one contender to fight Aljamain or Corey after they unify the belt. So I'm going to go with Corey in this fight. I think it's going to be another close one. I think both guys are going to put it on each other. And even though Corey doesn't want it to go to a decision because he doesn't want to be put in a bad position again, I feel like he'll do enough to get the W this time in a 5-round decision. Unanimous or split, either or, but I still think Corey wins via decision. And then the main event, Jan Blehovich versus Clover Shara. You look at, Polish power, Jan Blehovich, absolute beast. Only guy to give Izzy his only loss so far when they did that fight. Izzy went up to try and get the second belt. Didn't work out for him. Ended up, he did really well with, distance fighting, which is something that I don't think Glover's very good at. Because obviously Glover is more of your traditional like boxing with a jiu-jitsu mix. But Jan, the biggest thing in that fight was Jan made Izzy look like just a normal fighter, which is hard to do because Izzy is that good. Jan is just, I feel like just with how big that Jan is in comparison to Izzy, he was able to neutralize a lot, and the takedown was huge for Jan in that fight. You look at these guys, this is probably one of the oldest title fights in terms of the UFC that I've ever seen. You got Glover, who just turned 42, and Jan, who's 38. Okay, so Jan and Izzy last fought. Before that, Jan beat Dominic Reyes. Before that, Jan beat Corey Anderson. Then before that, Jan beat Jacare. Then before that, Jan beat Luke Rockhold. Jan's last loss was to Thiago Santos in 2019. And that was when they were, Thiago had just moved up to 205, if I remember correctly. So you look at the list of the guys that Jan's fought just in a row, and the fact that he hasn't lost in almost 3 years, that's super impressive. Meanwhile, Glover, he beat Anthony Smith, he beat Thiago Santos, he beat Nikita Krylov, Ion Cutelaba, Carl Roberson, Corey Anderson. So Glover hasn't lost in almost 4 years when you look at just who he's beaten. I think the biggest thing in this fight is that you look at Glover, he's taken so much damage in some of those fights, and he's been able to withstand it and ends up winning the fight. Like, he was getting his ass kicked by Anthony Smith, and then he just absolutely put it on Anthony Smith. I mean, Anthony Smith had to get veneers because his teeth got busted out. I think the biggest factor in this fight is going to be, you got a guy who with no quit in Glover Teixeira, but we've seen him get caught, like when he fought Alexander Gustafsson and when he fought Rumble. And those were some pretty bad knockouts. I mean, the fact that the guy's only got 7 losses in his career, the 3 off the top of my head that come to mind are just John Jones when he fought for the title years ago, Gustafsson, and Rumble. Those are the 3 that really stick out to me in terms of like his losses, like bigger losses. You got Glover, who has no quit, and then you got Jan, who's got so much power. And I think in this fight, Jan's gonna, this is another one where I want to vote with my heart, not my head. I want Glover to win because it would be a beautiful story. The guy who just turned 42 years old, who never quit and never gave up, even though he was old when he fought John Jones, and he's even older now, and he's getting a second shot. So I'd love for him to ride off into the sunset in Abu Dhabi with the title. But I don't think that Jan is going to allow that to happen. Jan is just too powerful, and Jan is too dangerous. I feel like if Jan gets him in a tough enough predicament, he's going to finish him. I feel like if he puts him in a bad position, Clover's not going to withstand it. You look at the damage that was put on against him when he fought even guys like Ion Cutelaba and Anthony Smith. Like, obviously they couldn't get it done. He survived. Jan, I think Jan is just a level above, like he's a level above Anthony Smith. Then there's Anthony Smith, and then there's Ion Cutelaba, because I don't know what the fuck is going on with Ion Cutelaba. I don't know. Dude's too inconsistent. Okay. So yeah, and also another thing, like I said, I already made my pick with my heart already. I already picked Dan Hooker. So I gotta choose with my head on this one. I'm gonna go with Jan Blehovich in this fight to round out this fight card. And then hopefully next week hopefully we can get Trenton and Jeffrey in here. So that way we can do the fight card for next week, because next week's UFC 268, which is obviously headlined by Usman and Covington. On that fight card, Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang 2, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler, which is the fight that Trent and I have been super excited for. Shane Burgos versus Billy Quarantillo, and then Frankie Edgar versus Marlon Vera. On the preliminaries, you got Al Iaquinta versus Bobby Green, Edmund Shabazian versus Nasruddin Imavov, and then Alex Pereira versus Andreas Michaelitis, I guess. But the main card is super exciting for that fight card. Again, if you guys enjoyed the episode, please make sure to like the video if you're watching on YouTube, share, subscribe to the channel, comment down below so that way we can interact with you guys. As I always say, I really enjoy interacting with people in the comment section. I'll always comment back. So please, again, make sure to just talk with us in the comment section. If you're listening to us in podcast platform, thank you so much. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel. And then also make sure to check out our Facebook page. Go like it. Yeah, I just hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I hope everybody's staying safe. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.